Getting sued is scary for most people, as we don't know our way around the legal system. How do you defend yourself? Could you afford a lawyer? And do you need one? To whom should you go to for help? What you don't know could really hurt you. The HELPS nonprofit law firm often represents seniors who can't afford to pay a lawyer. Founder and executive director Eric Olsen wants struggling seniors to know that they shouldn't worry about being sued. In this video, the attorney explains 5 things that seniors who are being sued should know but don't. And his advice could help you whether you're being sued now or you're just worried about it happening in the future. Because I'm in California and he's in Oregon, we will conduct the interview via Zoom. Hey everybody, it's Jeff Hoyt, editor-in-chief of SeniorLiving.Org. And once again, today I have the pleasure of speaking with attorney Eric Olsen. Eric is the founder and executive director of the HELPS nonprofit law firm and works with lots of seniors who are in debt, and some of them are actually getting sued. Welcome, Eric.
Good to be here with you today, Jeff. Thanks for having me.
So it seems you have lots of experience with seniors facing lawsuits. I know you used to be a bankruptcy attorney. So tell me, what's the most important thing that a senior who's being sued needs to know?
Well, there's several important things they need to know. I guess the first thing I would tell a senior is they're likely what is called to be judgment-proof, which means essentially that their income is protected.
Protected how?
If you owe a debt and you can't pay a creditor and you're a senior, you're going to get calls eventually. And a creditor might turn it over to a debt collection agency, and you may get calls and demand letters from the debt collection agency. And then there's a possibility that you may eventually get sued. A lawsuit is filed in the county where you live, which is a paper that says that you owe a certain amount of money, and it gives you a chance to contest the lawsuit if you want to. And someone might knock on your door, serve you with legal papers. And if you don't do anything, they will eventually get a judgment, which is an order from a court saying that you owe X amount of dollars. And so that's the purpose of a lawsuit, is to sue someone and to get a judgment. But what seniors need to know is that their income, their Social Security, their pension, their disability, their VA benefits, their retirement income is protected by federal and state laws. It's safe. It can't be taken from them. There's even a law that we've talked about a lot on this channel on how federal benefits such as Social Security deposited into your bank account is protected from garnishment up to an amount equal to twice the amount of your benefit you get each month. So in the sense that your income is protected, you're judgment proof. So if you didn't pay a debt, couldn't afford to pay a debt, and you didn't pay it, and someone sued you and got a judgment, they can't collect on that judgment. They can't take money from you because your income is protected. And that means you're judgment proof.
So to be clear, if someone is working at a job, they don't pay their credit card bills, whether they have the money or not, they choose not to pay it. A credit card company or a debt collector could go and get a judgment against you. And if you still don't pay it, then they could go to where you work and say, hey, every time Jeff gets a check, you have to send us some of the money instead of giving it to him. In other words, they can garnish your wages. But Social Security coming from the federal government or another government pension can't be garnished in a similar way.
That's true. A certain amount of income from a job is protected from garnishment, and some states don't even allow a garnishment of wages. But you're right. So seniors are different. Their Social Security and their retirement funds are protected. They're judgment proof. Can't be taken from them.
What if they own a home or even a car? Could that be taken for them to satisfy a judgment?
Well, that's the second most important thing a senior should know. And that is that states have what are called exemption laws that protect a certain amount of equity in a property that a person owns. For example, a certain amount of equity in a car, or a certain amount of equity in household goods, or a certain amount of equity in a home. Like maybe a state protects $100,000 equity in a home. If you have a home that's worth $300 and you owe $200, you got 100,000 equity in a state that has $100,000 exemption for homes, that's protected from judgment creditors. But what's interesting is it's not the practice of judgment creditors for consumer judgment like credit cards or other debts like that, to ever go after a person's personal property, even if they have property that's over and above the state exemption. Say, for example, you had a car that was worth $10,000 and the exemption in the state was $5,000. So you had a $5,000 equity in the car over and above the state exemption. They just don't go after people's personal property like that for a lot of different reasons. So seniors don't need to worry about losing personal property. And so what are those reasons? Maybe you own it with a wife and the judgment's just against the husband. It's very complicated to take a person's personal property. They have to go through a lot of steps. It's expensive. And so as a practice, they just don't do it, Jeff. So very unlikely a person would have a problem with their losing any of their property. So in that sense, they're judgment proof. They're judgment proof as regards to their income and judgment proof in regards to their property.
So a lot of seniors that you come in contact with don't realize that their income is protected and that credit card companies, consumer companies are not, usually they would not come and take someone's property. So that's very reassuring to know. But it is still scary if you are served with papers and you're threatened with a lawsuit. So what can you do to alleviate the fear? What else should seniors know if they are served with papers that they're being sued?
I guess the third thing they should understand that if they're sued and they owe money, they don't need to go to court to fight the lawsuit. Okay. And why is that? Well, their income is protected and so are their assets. And after all, if you owe the money, there may not be a defense to it. So if a creditor sue you and get a judgment, you don't need to worry because you're judgment proof. They can't take your money. They're not going to take your assets.
I mean, the word summons to me, I'm not a lawyer, but like you're being summoned to appear in court. So is it okay just to not show up? Are you breaking the law if you don't show up at a lawsuit?
Sometimes when you get served with a summons, in some jurisdictions, in some places, it might say a specific time and place. Sometimes they'll have a date and they might even have a time. And you think, oh, I have to go to court at that time. But if you read it carefully, that's only if you're going to contest the lawsuit. If you're not going to contest the lawsuit, then they're simply going to get a judgment. Now, you can contest the lawsuit if you want, but you might embarrass yourself since you owe the money. And if you don't contest it, they're simply going to get a judgment. You're judgment proof. You don't need to worry about it. But it can be tricky when you read the notice you get from the court when you're sued, making you think that you have to go to court when you don't have to go to court. So you need to read it carefully.
And basically what I'm hearing is that if someone accuses you of something you didn't do, it's fine to go to court and mount a defense, even if you can't afford an attorney to explain your side of it. But if a credit card company says you owe $1,000 and you really do owe $1,000, you don't really have to show up because they're right. You're going to lose the case because you're going to admit, yeah, I owe the money. You really don't have a defense. And they can't take the money because your sole income is Social Security, let's say.
That's right. You don't have to go to court and you don't need to work. You don't have to fight the lawsuit.
And then if you do fight a lawsuit, that involves an attorney and those can get rather expensive.
That's another important thing is, if you're a senior with modest income or lower income, and your income is protected like we've discussed, and you get sued for a debt, let's say a credit card you owe, you don't need to hire an attorney to represent you, okay? Only reason you would need an attorney is you need to have someone explain to you your rights, and that's what we're doing here, okay? We want seniors to know that their income is protected and why it's protected and how it's protected and how their assets are protected. So no, you don't need to file a lawsuit. You don't need to defend yourself in a lawsuit. I'll give you an example. In fact, this very morning, I talked to someone who had spent $175,000 from the husband's IRA to fight a lawsuit on a car that he sold. And I explained, well, where'd that money go? And she said, went to attorney fees. And where'd the money come from? It came from my husband's IRA. and now he's in the hospital, and we don't have that IRA any money. And their only other income was Social Security and a modest pension. And I asked him, I said, did they ever tell you that you didn't need to fight the lawsuit? That even if you lost, which you did anyway, that you didn't need to defend yourself? And the person said, no, I was never explained that. Instead, they spent, and I don't know how they managed to spend that much money, $175,000 from their IRA to defend a lawsuit when he could have done nothing. They could have gotten a judgment and the creditor couldn't collect anything from him. So, you know, you can always find an attorney to represent you to fight someone, but hopefully that attorney is going to give you the correct information. And one of the things that attorney should be telling you if you're a senior and you're receiving protected income is, hey, you don't need to fight this lawsuit if you don't want to. You don't need to pay me from your protected income, your retirement funds, from your IRA to fight this. You don't need to pay, because if you do nothing to get a judgment against you, they can't collect anything from you. Attorneys should be explaining that to people.
So on top of your Social Security being protected, any retirement income you have, whether IRA, that's protected as well. That can't be taken from you in a judgment?
Absolutely. There was a law passed in 1974 called ERISA, Employment Retirement Income Security Act, that protects pensions from garnishment. They can't be taken. And if you have a pension that isn't protected under that federal rule, that federal law, I can assure you your state has a law that protects your pension. In 45 years of practice, I've never seen a client ever lose their pension because of a debt that they owed. So and that also includes VA benefits, or disability income. All that income is protected. Doesn't need to be used to pay debt you can't afford to pay.
As well as IRAs and even 401ks?
That is correct. You bet.
Well, that is really reassuring. So you said this attorney that these unfortunate people you dealt with today, who represented them, never told them, hey, don't bother fighting this because they can't collect anyway. I assume debt collectors who call these people up and harass them are not going to tell seniors their rights.
So I guess that's the fifth thing seniors need to realize if they're sued, is that if you're sued, the attorney that sued you, they don't have a legal obligation to tell you your rights. They don't have to tell you that your income is protected and they can't do anything. Everything they do, in fact, is to try to get you to pay a debt, and try to intimidate you into thinking that you're going to have to pay the debt. They don't have to tell you that your income's protected. And if someone sues you and gets a judgment, some states even have proceedings that are post-judgment proceedings after they get a judgment, to send papers to you to fill out that where you list assets and stuff. And a lot of those times, those papers you get don't explain, by the way, these assets you're describing are protected. Okay. So if you don't know your rights, you're scared when you get that information. And then it's possible, although it's rare and in a lot of ways almost hard, I don't even like to talk about it. There is a proceeding where an attorney that has a judgment against you can call you into court to answer questions about your assets and your income. And in a lot of jurisdictions, that's called a debtor's exam. But it's really rare that happens. But when I say that word, people get scared. So what a debtor's exam is, it's an order signed by a judge saying for you to come in at a specific date and time to answer questions given by the attorney that has the judgment against you, the creditor. It's different than when you're sued, when you don't have to go to court. This is after there's a judgment. You might get an order saying you have to come in at a specific date and time. So that's an order from a judge, and you do need to honor that. Although when that happens with our clients, and it's rare, we reach out to the attorney, we give them proof of the client's income, Social Security, and 19 out of 20 times, they realize it's a waste of time and they'll say, okay, you don't have to go. And they get it dropped from the court docket, so a client doesn't even have to go to that. But if there is a judgment against you and you are ordered to go into court to answer questions, you have to take care of that. Otherwise, there could be complications. They could do further things. You don't want that to happen.
So there are rare times where a judge will tell you after there's a judgment against you, yes, you do have to come to court. In that case, you should just go in and be honest and answer the questions.
Right. You understand, it's not the judge that the judge is only signing a piece of paper that the attorney prepared saying for you to come in. The judge personally is going to protect you. When you go into the court, what they'll usually do is they put you under oath, put you in another room, and they're going to ask you a question. You just explain. My only income is Social Security, pension, disability. It's protected. On those very rare occasions that happens, we give our client a piece of paper just to read. But like I said, most of the time, it's rare that this happens. And I don't want people to get freaked out by thinking, oh, if I get sued and they get a judgment, I'm going to have to go into court for a debtor's exam. Highly unlikely. When we contact attorneys, we tell them our client's income is Social Security, a pension. And if they read it, common sense is going to tell them, oh, it's not worth our while to pursue this. Why do I need to waste my time to have them come into court? But they might do that for people that aren't represented or that don't know. So get them to call them to make arrangements to pay a debt. Remember, they don't have to tell them that their income is protected. They can intimidate them. And they do sometimes.
Right, but it's a good thing you're on the senior side to help
That's right.
Protect them against that intimidation. So basically, one of the things HELPS does is protect seniors from debt collector harassment.
Our main job is to protect seniors from debt collector harassment. We do that by when people enroll in HELPS, they give us the creditors or collectors they owe money to. We send out what's called a cease and desist letter. And under a federal law passed in 1978 called the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, a debt collector can no longer call that person or send them a demand letter anymore. They have to deal with us as their client's attorney. Okay. And, they could still be sued, but when our client gets sued, we send a letter to the attorney that sued them saying their only income is Social Security. We understand you're going to get a judgment. Don't touch their bank account. And they can't anyway for the reasons I explained. And that's the end of it. So the client doesn't need to worry. They don't need to stress over this stuff. The second mission of HELPS is to educate seniors how they can maintain their financial independence. So we educate seniors about how their income is protected, how they don't have to worry about a lawsuit, why they don't have to go to court, and why they don't need to worry. So that's why we do these videos with Senior Living, so that seniors, especially seniors that are poor or lower income or even modest income, understand that their income is protected. Lawmakers protected it for them. They can use it for their basic needs like food, medicine, and housing. And they don't need to worry about debt collectors harassing them or taking their money.
And we'll put your phone number on the screen so people have more questions about this. They can reach out to you. And really appreciate your help, Eric. Thanks.